Okay, welcome back. This is part 4 of our lectures about the Renaissance. And when we last left off, we were talking about the High Renaissance and the late period of the High Renaissance dominated by three very important artists. And I said that that still is not completely the end of the story because there's one other major artist and one other major event going on as part of the Renaissance. And that event put in words would be Venice. Venice was another important art city. Like most of the Renaissance art that we've been looking at, that's from the Italian Renaissance, was in the areas between Milan and Florence and Rome, sometimes from cities like Padua. Um, but in that particular region, Venice was on the other side, on the eastern side of Italy, and the traditions in Venice were going on separately, but influenced by what was going on in the rest of the Italian Renaissance. And the main thing that I want to talk about is what was happening in Venice was more and more of an interest in art that was dominated by painting, dominated by oil painting. There was an influence coming from the Northern Renaissance, from Flanders, from Northern Europe, but also it was an interest in art that was much more atmospheric than anything that was going on either in the Northern Renaissance or in the other parts of Italy. We can see an early version of this with this Bellini painting, where we can see an interest in, at least in light, and some interest in atmospheric perspective in the way that the landscape goes far, far back. So, and that's another major interest about this school of painting is figures in a landscape space. And then we really start to see a shift with Giorgione, who was a student of Bellini's. Over here is Bellini, over here is Giorgione. And as a student of, whoop, I went back too fast. As a student of Bellini, um, he kind of pushed this idea, trying to make these, he was especially focused on these kind of pastoral images of people in the landscape, and especially of images that had a sense of atmosphere to them. Like this, the storm is coming in this famous painting called The Tempest. And then Giorgione's most famous student was probably the greatest artist of the Italian Renaissance, Titian. And so, we often talk about the big three, and if you pay attention to things like the Turtles, you'll know about Donatello as well as Raphael, Michelangelo, um, and Leonardo. But Titian is often left out, which is a huge shame because he's probably the most important. He is the most important for two reasons. One, because he truly was a painter's painter, um, and he made as much of a difference in the development of oil painting as as Van Eyck did in the development of oil painting. But also, he is incredibly important because what he did with painting, especially towards the end of his career, what he did in painting influenced later art, the Mannerists, and especially the Baroque artists, so much more than any of the other Italian artists. Really, we owe Baroque painting to Titian. Um, and so, yes, and also I think he's amazing. So we're going to move on to the next slide. So here are two more kind of mid-career Titian paintings. And so we can see both that he specialized in these kind of pastoral scenes, many of them mythologically based, like this one right here, Bacchus and Ariadne, but also paintings like this, where these would have been commissioned paintings of real people who wanted to make a work to demonstrate their piety to their community and to their church, similar to this gorgeous painting right here. This is an earlier one, but just a fantastic, the Pizarro Madonna. Pizarro is the name of the family that commissioned it, and they're in here in places. Um, and it is a gorgeous piece of artwork. And so this represents kind of middle career for Titian, and here these two works represent the end of Titian's career. And the late paintings especially are so incredibly important Their influence goes through the Baroque all the way to the 20th century. Paintings like The Flaying of Marsyas are probably equally influential on 20th century painters as they are on the Baroque painters. In his end of his career, he really got interested in painting becoming about mark making and gesture. And these paintings are so full of life and action in each brushstroke, each mark. Um, and so, yeah, these paintings are probably, for me, the the greatest achievement of the Renaissance. And I think that might be the end of this lecture. There we go. All right. See you in class tomorrow morning.